Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. Welcome to Everything Cooperative. This morning, we had the absolute pleasure of having Mr. Ron Hantz on with us this morning and Dr. Ann Gessler. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Ron, what part of the world are you in?
Oh, I'm in Washington, D.C., Vernon.
Okay. And Dr. Gessler, can I call you Ann?
Sure, yeah, please do.
Ann, where are you?
I'm in Houston right now. Very hot.
Right. Okay. Houston, Texas. All right. What's nice about Zoom is we can be around the world and talk. And so yes. I really appreciate you all taking time out. In Houston, what is it, 9:30 there in the morning?
Yes.
Your hour difference.
9:30.
Okay. So when I have people from California, it's 7:30, and sometimes people don't get up that early. So, okay, to be on the radio. But I'm glad that you are here, and we're going to talk about co-ops. Ron, what is the name of the organization that you started?
The Network for Developing Conscious Communities.
And what's a conscious community?
Well, conscious community is just defined as embracing a culture of consciousness and where you operate consciously around the broad spectrum of your business concerns, whether it's strategic planning, whether it's operating system processes, developing the vision that guides the organization. That's what consciousness is.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Conscious communities. And is that just in the D.C., Baltimore area, or is that nationwide?
No, it's nationwide. I think people operate consciously in what they do, and they can operate unconsciously in what they do. But we try to focus on the conscious evolution of thought and practice in developing the work that we do and the work that we share with others in terms of how we see ourselves operating in this space of an organization working in community development.
So on April 6th through the 8th of this year, what is that, about a week from now?
Yeah, a week from now,
6th
yes.
to 8th, you're having a conference. What's that conference?
The National Conference on Black Cooperative Agenda.
Black Cooperative Agenda. And what do you mean by building cooperative capacity through conscious practices?
Well, conscious practices, as we define it, Vernon, is the conscious practice of creating that which drives the vision of the organization that you're working with. So what we are attempting to do is drive conscious practices around doing the work that we need to do in terms of building the capacity of the organizations that we are sharing this platform with.
Okay, and can you just give us some examples of those organizations and some of the speeches or workshops that you'll be doing?
Oh, goodness. Well, we're doing a host of workshops. We have the USDA participating in terms of their grant programs, their socially disadvantaged groups grant, as well as their cooperative development group grant program.
But I thought USDA is rural. How is that going to work in D.C. and Baltimore and New York?
Well, because the consciousness is not just relegated to urban. It's relegated to building the platform of conscious work around doing cooperative work, whether it's rural or urban. Okay. So yes, mm-hmm. So and they do, and you don't have to be physically in a rural community to do work in a rural community. That's what I've learned as well.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so just to say that we have National Association of Latino Asset Builders, NALCAB, is participating. They're doing a session on advocacy. We have a session by Generation that's doing a session on political organizing. We have a session that's dealing with law and talking about the platform of law in cooperatives. So we and then we have an international forum that we're dealing with around looking at the cooperatives in the diaspora.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ron, this is April the 6th through the 9th. So what time does it start on the 6th?
Well, it starts we're convening breakfast at 8 o'clock, but the first session will start at 9 o'clock. I'll open up the conference at 9 o'clock from 9 to 10. I'll give a little brief history of the history of why we are doing this conference, what you can expect out of the conference, and
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So if I want to register to come to this conference on the 6th, how do I do that?
Well, you can go to our website at www.ndccnetwork.org, and you can follow the registration there on site.
All right. Let's go back over that. www.
N as in Nancy, D as in David, C as in Charlie, network.org.
Okay. So go to ndccnetwork.org and you can follow it. It has a registration button there.
That's right. There's a button for registration. And also to information about the conference and the sessions as well. And hosting some of the speakers as well. Okay.
So is it free? I get free breakfast?
Well, we do have a scholarship link there on the website, Vernon. So if folks are interested in applying for the scholarship, certainly they can do that there on the website. But the conference does come with a cost. It's $225 for registration for 3 days, and that includes breakfast, lunch, and a reception that we're hosting on Thursday evening. And then there's an $80 registration fee for students. So yeah.
Okay, so I'm a 75-year-old student. I can pay for $80?
Yeah.
I'm a student of life, Ron.
Yes, Vernon. We understand that. And we make allowances for the students of life.
Okay. $225 registration. It's all day Wednesday, all day Thursday, and Friday of this coming week. The 6th through the 8th. You can go to www.ndccnetwork.org and follow the signs to register. So tell me some of the names of the people that are going to be there besides Dr. Ann Gessler.
Oh, well, we have Dr. Kamara Neal, who's administrator with the USDA. She'll be our actually, Dr. Gessler is our luncheon speaker on opening up on Wednesday. But and then we have Dr. Kamara Neal, who will be our keynote speaker, who will be presenting on Thursday at lunch. We have our Professor Carmen Nobles, who will be presenting from SUNY, the Community College of New York Law School. Justin Hill from Georgetown Law Center. We have Sharon Thomas, who's a grower and participator in the cannabis movement. And so we are going to have several sessions around cannabis co-ops. And so I'm looking forward to those discussions. We have Omar Fiera, who's doing a session on Co-op 101. We have, I'm trying to remember all the folks who's going to be there now.
So Ron, let me ask you, if you would go to www.ndccnetwork.org, you can find out all of this information of who's going to be there.
Oh yeah. We've posted photos of all the presenters. Their bios are up there as well. So we're expecting a real robust, energized conversation and a process about building capacity, and that's what we're really focusing this conference on: building capacity of Black-led co-ops.
Building capacity, Black-led co-ops. So this year, we're celebrating Women's History Month, and the theme for Women's History Month is providing healing, promoting health. And this is our last week for celebrating Women's History Month. Last month, February, was Black History Month. It was also about healing and health. And that seems to be the theme this year, particularly coming out of COVID. So do you have any sense, Ron, if any of the sessions that you're having are going to be dealing with providing healing or promoting health?
Well, certainly all these sessions about promoting healing in a space of developing Black cooperatives. We're really encouraged by the participation that we receive from all the presenters who are donating their time. And I do want to say that. And I'm really honored that folks have responded to our call to present at this particular conference. And so health-wise, healing-wise, we're having several sessions around cannabis and developing cooperative cannabis. And so cannabis is now getting its rightful due in terms of in the health space of how it as a herb can contribute to healthy well-being and states of well-being. So we're really interested in promoting this conversation around cannabis, and we're seeing now a big lift in the country around cannabis growers and in terms of how the product or the plant is being used to promote good, healthy lifestyles.
Well, I like that cannabis for health, but I really like that that's a great way of increasing wealth is by selling cannabis. Our society put young Black men mostly, but Black folk in jail for distributing cannabis or marijuana. Now that they've legalized it, it has been harder for Black folks to get into that business and make that money. So I'm glad you're dealing with that.
Yes.
Glad you're dealing with it. We have a minute to go before we take our first break. So can you give us the name of your webpage again?
Yes. www. N as in Nancy, D as in David, C as in Charlie, network.org. www.ndccnetwork.org is where you can find all information for the upcoming conference.
And I see you have Lakeisha Wolf that's going to be on there. She's with Ujamaa Collective in Pittsburgh. Yes. And you mentioned Carmen already out of New York. So you've got a very impressive group of people in here. So I'm looking forward to it, see how I can get up there to talk about it. Folks, we're going to take our first break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to spend a little bit more time talking to Dr. Ann Gessler. We'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial.
Your news talk station.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes. We had this morning Mr. Ron Hantz and Dr. Ann Gessler as our guests, and Ron just talked to us in this first segment about the conference, the National Conference of Black Cooperative Agenda, Building Cooperative Capacity Through Conscious Practices, which will be at the Doubletree Hilton in Pikesville, Maryland, April the 6th through the 8th. This is this coming Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and it's a very impressive lineup of speakers and workshops. And we have Dr. Ann Gessler that's going to be the speaker on Wednesday at the luncheon. It's a $225 registration fee. There are scholarships. If you go on the webpage, you can register and ask for scholarships. And if you're a student, no matter what age, if you're a full-time student, it's $80 for students. Ron, I really appreciate the work you're doing. Always have. And during the break, you were saying that you really appreciate the work that I am doing, and I thank you for that. I thank you for that.
Yeah, Vernon, I think that enough can't be said around the work that you do in terms of creating the space for cooperatives to share their stories, cultivate relationships with each other, and all that is centered around your commitment to the work of building out this ecosystem of cooperatives, be they black, white, brown. You do just do an extraordinary job in terms of building out this space. So I just want to just acknowledge that here this morning.
So what I have found in this cooperative space are just really great people trying to help each other and help the society. And that's why when I got knowledge of it by managing housing co-ops here in the District of Columbia and watching how everyday people make very intelligent decisions, sometimes not even with a high school degree, but they get the knowledge that they need to run a business. And that's what you are providing too. You're learning outcomes, raise awareness, develop the skills, increase the knowledge, plan for this future. And in this future, Ron, what are you looking for black, brown, indigenous folks, marginalized community? And I'll even put poor white people in that same category, because when I grew up in West Virginia, we had black and whites in our community working poor. And poverty makes no distinction between race. So what are the plans, the future actions that you hope to come out of this conference?
Well, that you can be an individual and address your own individual needs and yet buy into a collective agenda and deal with collective needs. And so if we can move that individual platform to a collective platform, then I think that we would have accomplished the goals that I have envisioned for this organization and this work.
Well, we have the same vision. And I took this vision 9 years ago now. June will be 9 years ago, to Chuck Snyder at NCB, of getting people to understand what this co-op world is about. And I'm mainly focused on poor folk, and that people can create wealth by working together. It's self-help is the first value, but self-help working in the group. I like the way you said that. And Dr. Gessler, how did you get into this co-op world?
Yes, I was in my doctoral program at University of Texas at Austin right after the recession, and I was doing all these interviews, oral history interviews with food trucks and community gardens. And one thing that I kept noticing as a model that kept coming up was this cooperative model as a way to kind of rebuild after the recession. And I was really struck with how resilient that model was in helping communities foster some kind of economic stability. And so that became the basis of my doctoral research, interviewing Austin and New Orleans cooperatives. And that also led to my book, researching the history of New Orleans cooperatives.
But what were you majoring in? Your doctorate?
I'm an American Studies graduate, so the culture, history of America.
American Studies.
Yes.
In Austin. So Austin has a rich culture of cooperatives.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so the recession was 2007, 2008. So you're a young person compared to Ron and me, but okay. Okay. And I'm so delighted that you learned about co-ops at an early age. I think I was 55 before I learned about co-ops. And I have 2 master's degrees and undergrad. I didn't hear about it anywhere in my formal education. So Yeah, I'm glad you got it in doing your research. And it doesn't sound like you got it in the classroom, though. You didn't hear about co-ops in the classroom.
No, it really took actually talking to people and seeing how people are actually coming up with their own solutions to economic uncertainty.
Economic uncertainty. So this is the Great Recession of 2007, 2008. So we're in a downturn. So what did you find out with this resilience that you're talking about for folks that are in this co-op space in Austin?
Right. Well, when I was, I would ride the bus and there would be all these storefronts totally empty. And so people were really hurting. And then I would interview these community gardens who were planting, backyard gardens, teaching residents how to grow their own food, try to take the burden off of their daily bills, but also teaching them self-sufficiency. And so it was really having a great impact at a local level. And what was also interesting is that people started collaborating and forming coalitions, and so trying to bring about greater change throughout Austin as far as the alternative economy is concerned. So thinking about how to advocate for cooperatives at a broader level.
So you're doing your research. You stumble upon this thing called co-ops, as I did in board meetings and managing limited equity housing co-ops. I stumbled upon this and got very, very interested in it. And then in the National Association of Housing Co-ops, I found out I was the president of it at the time, 9 years ago, and they were saying if we would just build housing co-ops and people would buy them. And I had taught marketing at Howard, and I'm going, wait a minute, nobody knows about co-ops. This is a best kept secret. And that was said both at the White House and the UN. This is a best kept secret. So how can we tell people about co-ops? And that's what was the idea that started the radio show. And we're looking for other ways of telling people, like your conference, Ron, how do you let people know, as many people as possible, about this magic that happens when people come together to help self through groups? And decisions that were made in these boardrooms were decisions that were what was best for the group, not what's best for Ron or what's best for Ann or Vernon, irrespective of the group, but what's best for the group. And then again, when the tide rises, everybody got the benefits. So what are some of the benefits that you found out that co-ops bring?
Well, in my research about New Orleans, time and time again, what I was finding is that these co-ops offer concrete benefits to their neighborhood, whether that's a new sanitation system or a public market. They're meeting residents' needs in a real way, and they're also equitably redistributing resources across communities, and they're empowering residents to get involved in local governance. And they're also scaling up, thinking about how to work across regions, even internationally, thinking about how to improve lives, not just for their specific community, but also people across the world.
What is this equitably redistribute wealth? What is that? Can you say that in some words I understand? What is that?
Yeah, sure. So if you're a member of a worker co-op, for example, there was a recording cooperative in the 1960s that was recording people from like Prince Lala and Dr. John. That was a worker co-op, so people have investment in their own decisions and their own money, and they're keeping their money local. They're reinvesting in the community, and so they're actually improving their community by working there.
But how do you equitably redistribute the wealth? How do they do that?
Yeah, so in the 60s, for example, these music cooperatives were fighting against these big unions that were taking all these musicians' money. They weren't giving them an equal share. And so by working in this recording studio, you were keeping your money. It wasn't being bled out of New Orleans, and you were building up the New Orleans music economy and music industry,
okay,
for example.
So what I like about redistribution of wealth in a co-op world is that the cooperators make the money, and then they get to say what they do with that money. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's not some organization outside of New Orleans or outside of that community that gets the wealth, drains the wealth. Okay. So this co-op keeps the wealth in the community, and the community members are the ones that get to say what happens to that wealth. That was the first reason I like co-ops. I think it's the third principle of cooperation is member economic participation. You put a little bit in normally, and then if you make money, you get something out. And hopefully that's a lot more most often than you put in. We're going to take our second break. Dr. Gessler, I would like to come back and ask you for some examples of, well, first I want to know why you went to New Orleans, and then some examples of the different types of co-ops that you end up interviewing in New Orleans. We'll be right back.
Your news talk station.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oakes, and the program is Everything Cooperative. You know, we have Dr. Ann Gessler on with us today, and Ron Hantz. Ron started the Network for Developing Conscious Communities, and he's having a conference here next week on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's the National Conference Black Cooperative Agenda, and the theme is building cooperative capacity through conscious practices, that consciousness. So, Dr. Gessler, I said when we come back, I really want to talk to you about if you could give me, let's take one. Well, first off, why did you go to New Orleans? You're in Austin in school. Now, why did you go to New Orleans to study the cooperatives in New Orleans?
Yeah, originally I wanted to do this massive comparative project between co-ops in Austin and New Orleans and actually Detroit. And then the project just got so vast that I realized, I'm never going to graduate. So I decided to just lop it off and just concentrate on New Orleans. But there's the history of cooperatives, as I was telling you before, they have grown up with New Orleans. So it's a great case study. I was very happy to just concentrate on New Orleans.
Have you read Dr. Jessica Gordon-Nimzard's book on collective carriage?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's so fascinating. And she was on your show, too.
Yeah, she's been on. That was the 6th time she's been on, and I just learned so much every time. But she told me the first time she was on that it took her 15 years to research it. And when she started, she was told that blacks don't do co-ops. Okay, that's a white hippie thing, not a black thing. And now she tells me that she just keeps learning more and more and more. Just like you said, the New Orleans experience of cooperation. The National Association of Housing Co-ops, we had our annual meeting in New Orleans, and I tried to find co-ops and I couldn't find them. I mean, so you're telling me stuff, this was probably 10 years ago. So you're telling me stuff about New Orleans I had no idea. So tell me, give me an example of a co-op that was in New Orleans that you found.
Sure. Well, I'm going to give you a little preview of the talk that I'm going to give at the conference next week. But there was a really interesting medical insurance co-op during the Depression that a hospital administrator named Albert A.W. Dent created, called the Flint Goodrich Medical Co-op. And this was really important. It was an insurance co-op. It gave poor, specifically Black New Orleanians, but also anyone from Louisiana, any rural Black Louisianan, the ability to have up to 3 weeks of hospital care in Flint Goodrich Hospital, which was a Black serving hospital. And that was really important because during the Depression, healthcare was segregated. And so it was building trust among Black doctors and Black nurses and the Louisiana Black community. So they provided things like x-rays, basic insurance. And Albert Dent, A.W. Dent went on to working with regional cooperatives, trying to build the cooperative movement and include African American voices in the cooperative movement across the South. So he was a really important figure during the Great Depression and World War II.
Well, you're saying that Black hospitals were segregated in the 20s and 30s, but in Bluefield, West Virginia, where I grew up, it was in the 60s, and it was still segregated. I mean, you could go to the white hospital, but most blacks went to the black hospital. It was still that segregation there. Okay, that was one, medical cooperative, and that fits in with this, both the Black History Month in February and the Women's History Month of providing healing or providing health, hope, promoting health. So, what's another one? And was that a worker co-op? Who owned that hospital or the insurance?
It was not a worker co-op. It was more of, they had like an expert managerial class, but people got, if they bought into it, they could get a fair share of the pooling the resources toward medical insurance.
That's more like a consumer co-op then. Mm-hmm. That's a consumer co-op where the people that use the products or services, the hospital in this case, that care, they own the business. Okay, good news. All right, so that's one. We got a consumer co-op. Give me another example of a co-op.
Yeah, well, we have the Consumers Cooperative Union, which was in a different area of New Orleans, and that was really fascinating. That was a grocery store and credit union and deli and ice cream parlor that was created around World War II and right after World War II, and that was integrated. It had local Black residents. It had Spanish and Latin American residents, as well as German immigrants and Jewish residents. And they were all, even though the neighborhood itself was street by street segregated, this was an opportunity to integrate and socialize in a new way. So people could get together and they could invest in the credit union as well as the grocery store and the deli. And that was for about 15 years that existed.
About what years is this now?
About 1941 to the 1960s, mid-1960s.
You have any idea why it stopped?
Yes, it has a sad story. The disinvestment of inner city neighborhoods in New Orleans, driven by white flight, just decimated neighborhoods like the Freret neighborhood in New Orleans. And so a lot of people moved out, eviscerating the membership. And so the neighborhood cooperative just collapsed. But there have been other attempts, other cooperatives that have resurrected that idea in that neighborhood.
So you have two consumer co-ops. One is a hospital and the other one is a credit union and a food co-op and deli and ice cream parlor. Okay. Another example in New Orleans.
Yeah, well, we had the record studio. That was a worker co-op. Lots of credit unions. There was a credit union network.
I want to talk about that record for a minute. That record company studio. It's because that's an artist, and so I'm beginning to see more artists forming co-ops, and this is the artists, the people that sang or played the guitar or the piano. They were the members of this co-op that got and it is a studio, so they probably had the mixers and all of the stuff that they needed to record their music.
Yes, absolutely. So it was an in-house recording studio. They also licensed their own music so that performers who were writing songs and lyrics and the actual music would get compensated fairly. And session musicians would also get adequately compensated as well. Rather than just getting paid for the one session, they would get royalties based on their repeated performances and radio airings of their records and the sales of their records. So it was really important. It was a very different model than what particularly African American musicians experienced in New Orleans at the time.
And what's the years for this record studio?
They were just a little, they only lasted 1 or 2 years. But Harold Batiste was the person who started that, and he was a very famous musician. He just dedicated his life to advocating for civil rights and the empowerment of Black musicians. So he didn't stop advocating. And that's what's really interesting about these co-ops, is that even if one ends, the members themselves pass on those traditions and those goals and principles to the next project.
So that's what Dr. Nimhard had said on one of these things, that there is no failure in co-ops because all of this learning takes place. And then people will move on and do other things that help themselves and the community. So, yeah. Okay. So it did not exist because it sounds like that would have been phenomenal. And it would be interesting why it did not exist, because she also talks about in her book a lot of times how the white established businesses would go in and sabotage these because they didn't want to give up that profit, and they did not want the black musicians, in this case black musicians, to make the money there, because if the section musicians, they got paid for the 2-hour studio time and that's it. Now you're talking about paying them the studio time plus the royalties on whatever this record makes. And I can see these white studios, or those studios that were in the business and they were normally, if not always, white owned, then they want to keep that business. They want to keep that money. And so they would sabotage these companies, is what she's talked about. Don't know if that's what happened here, but I wouldn't be surprised. Okay. The artist, the worker co-op.
Oh, well, I mean, I think Ron can also speak to this, that we're thinking about white intimidation of black cooperatives. I was thinking about the credit union movement in Louisiana. That has also a very tempestuous history, where black credit unions in the segregated South sometimes were not allowed into supposedly integrated cooperative meetings, credit union meetings, and they had to stand outside of the building while the meeting was happening. And then some people would come out, some white people would come out and actually tell them what happened in their own meeting. And I know, Ron, you were talking about your history of civil rights oriented credit unions as well. But there's a whole oral history collection of black credit unions that are also really fascinating to talk about.
Ron, did you want to share that history?
It's just that, what we're seeing is that black folks have struggled with trying to align their values and their work ethic with white-led organizations. And this is not a testament to all white organizations, but those that have had the power to wield decision-making have been really destructive in terms of building out the platform for black cooperatives to operate and to gain impact and engagement. And so I'm not surprised and taken by the attitude of those credit unions, because the same attitude was pervasive throughout most of all the cooperative ecosystem, even today.
So this first principle, the main reasons I like co-ops that I got bit by the bug was the fifth principle: education, training, and information. I saw people getting trained and making great decisions. And like I said, they're everyday people, maybe not even a high school degree. They get that, but they don't have the formal education, but they have the education to make great decisions. And then the second was this volunteer and open membership. Didn't regard the race or gender or religion or politics. But it seemed like even if you have these values or these principles and you stick these companies inside a racist society, America, then that racism falls in there. And that's what we have seen throughout that history in the U.S. Co-ops are phenomenal, but inside America, whether it's Tulsa, Oklahoma, or recording studio or credit union or whatever, they can still get beaten up by this racism. Got one more before we take our next break?
Well, I do want to just say that Dr. Nierbaum's book, Collective Courage, went through a period of analyzing Black cooperatives up until the 60s. And then in the late 60s, up until the 80s, there was another group that also espoused the work around building out Black cooperatives, which was the Poor People's Development Foundation.
So let me stop you there, and we'll come back and talk about that after our next break. We have our final break, and I want to come back, give a shout out about the conference, talk about the 60s to the 80s and 80s to now, and get more examples, Dr. Gessler, of New Orleans cooperative development. We'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial.
Your news talk station.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome back. This is Everything Cooperative, and we have Mr. Ron Hantz and Dr. Ann Gessler as our guests. This program has been on the air now 8.5 years. NCB has been our supporter, both financially and spiritually, if you will. They've been our main cheerleader and given us a lot of information about this cooperative space and what's going on in this cooperative space. NCB's mission is to support and be an advocate for America's cooperatives and their members, especially in low-income communities, by providing innovative financial and related services. So I cannot give a bigger shout-out for NCB and the late, great Chuck Snyder for sort of working with us and helping us get this program up and started. And Ron, when we first got started, we used to have to beg people to be on. Now it's people call us and say, you had Ron Hantz on, why didn't you have me on? Okay. So it has changed, and I'm also amazed that people can go to our webpage, www.everything.coop. So just go to everything.coop, and you can put in where it says episodes, put in Ron Hantz, and he's been on the show 3 or 4 times, and you can listen to all of those shows. And you can go to Spotify or YouTube, put in Ron Hantz's name or Everything Co-op Ron Hantz, and you can get these shows on YouTube also. So we have a great team of 4 of us. Pat Thornton produces the show. Justin Franks is the person that does our webpage and put everything up there. And Rob McClinton is the guy that does our marketing. And he's been doing it pro bono just because marketing this and getting this word out. He's just a phenomenal guy, and he helps marketing for co-ops. His company is called Small World. So it's just a great, great human being. So we have a nice little group, and we just added a couple people to help us with our social media. We're trying to get that up. A lady, Ron, from Kenya. Melanie is doing our social media, and Samuel's helping with that. So we got a group of people that's out of the love of this business and helping folks to get the benefits of cooperation and that redistribution of wealth that Dr. Gessler talked about earlier. How to get everyday people, poor people, to get wealth so they can have health. Yeah, that's it. You were talking about the Poor People's Foundation before we took a break, Ron?
Yeah, the Poor People's Development Foundation was founded out of the 1968 movement that Dr. King started in terms of bringing poor people to the District of Columbia to advocate on their behalf against the war in Vietnam and the redistribution of wealth. And so this group, which was headed by Baynard Ruskin and a few others, took the word of and work of cooperatives nationwide, particularly along the Eastern Seaboard. And so, they worked for 10 years organizing workshops and bringing products and produce from the South up into northern Eastern Coast markets for sale. And most importantly, they were the group that that organized other participants to engage in the formation of the National Consumer Cooperative Bank, which later would become the NCB, National Cooperative Bank. Right. And so this group was very instrumental in doing just what you said, Vernon, working with Black, Brown, Indigenous groups, poor whites, to educate them about the benefits of forming cooperatives. So I just want to echo out that the name of this conference that we've adopted, the National Conference on Cooperative Agenda, is not a generation of my thought. It's a continuation of the conference which they had last held in 1980. So I just wanted to let the folks know that.
So I've been trying to get Reverend Barber, who's taken up the Poor People's Campaign. He and Reverend Dr. Theo Harris, to be on the show, because his conversation, which I love hearing him talk and preach, is on how you can solve the poverty problem is with a political motive and method. And I've been trying to get him to do what Bayard Rustin and Martin Luther King did, and that's not only a political answer, but an economic answer. Okay. So yeah, it's and to me that economic answer is cooperative. I don't see it happening in a capitalistic model. Dr. Ann Gessler, can you tell us another example of co-ops in Louisiana or New Orleans?
Sure. I mean, just to echo what you both were saying, New Orleans was also very invested in cooperatives and anti-poverty movements and blending those two together. So there's the Free Southern Theater, which was a Black theater collective, but they worked to incubate local New Orleanian talent. They had a community theater. It was cooperatively run, but they were also really invested in working with rural Black communities across the state. So they worked with Father Albert McKnight. They worked with the the Federation of Southern Cooperatives and other Southern-focused cooperatives to develop consumer cooperatives, all sorts of, producer cooperatives, all kinds of credit unions to build a political channel and an economic channel for redeveloping Louisiana. And then they also shipped, just as Ron was saying, they shipped their produce up north to northern markets too. So they were exactly part of that movement.
Well, the Federation of Southern Co-op, who started in 1967 with mainly Black farmers, but they have credit unions. They have a lot of different co-ops, quilting co-ops, all kinds of different co-ops that's members of the Federation. So I've gotten to know them, and I've gone to 4 of their annual meetings and look forward to being there again this coming year. But it's amazing in Louisiana. There are 13 southern states that they represent, and Louisiana is one of those 13 states. But I still don't hear all of this history that you're talking about in those meetings or in Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhard's book. There's just so much history about blacks and co-ops, and there's been hidden history. Ron, it's just like Dr. Nimhard said, she couldn't find anything. This hidden history, and this hidden history about the foundation that you were talking about, the Poor People's Development Foundation. This is the first time I've heard about it through you. Okay, I had not even heard about it. I'd like to get more information about that. So to get to Reverend Barber and Reverend Harris, Theo Harris, to say this is the history of the Poor People's Campaign. I'd like to see if you can put that into today. And what I really want, Ron, and this is good, you can help with what you're doing, is they will have people in their meetings. They'll have poor people or people that are struggling, home health care workers, taxi drivers, teachers, porters, all these different people. They'll get up and talk, and I'm going, let's direct these people to different organizations, corporate development centers around the world, around the U.S. at least, and to help them to start their own business. Not say, well, $15 an hour is great, but you can see what happens to that with inflation. But let's get them to start their own business, and they can make $21 an hour, not spur on inflation, $25 an hour. Literally the sky's the limit based on what they can produce in terms of profit. So yeah, I don't start me preaching. All right. Free Southern Theater sounds awesome. I love New Orleans. My late wife was from New Orleans, and their food, their culture, their singing, their dancing, they love life in New Orleans. And if you can take that love of life, second line, just dancing in the streets, take that love of life and put it into co-op world to be able to make money off of it, and where that money does not go outside of the community, but it stays in the community. We only have 2 more minutes left. I love this conversation, you guys. I want to see if I can get up there Wednesday to hear your talk, Dr. Gessler. Ron, give them your email address again.
Yes, thank you, Vernon. Well, you can find out more about the conference by visiting our website at www.N as in Nancy, D as in David, C as in Charlie, network.org. www.ndccnetwork.org, and go and preview the agenda, the schedule, and we'd love to have you come and join in what we know will be a meaningful, intentional discussion on these 3 days.
I know I can't make it all because I have my show next Thursday, but I will see what I can do to come up and hear as much as I can, participate as much as I can. Any last words or comments? Anybody? Ron, you want to send anything?
Well, I just think that the time is pivotal and the time is critical now to elevate the consciousness in the Black community development ecosystem, and particularly around the building of Black cooperatives. So we're looking forward to having robust, energized conversations and moving forward, because there is an agenda to move this movement forward beyond just the conference.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, Dr. Gessler, Ron Hantz. Thank everybody out there for listening today. We'll be back next Thursday. Please live cooperatively. Thanks.
Your news talk station.